The following is a sermon that was preached at Hope Lutheran Church in Manhattan, Kansas. For more information about our church or to watch and listen to past sermons from Hope, visit manhattanhope.com. Thank you for listening. For the words and works of Jesus, I would invite you to please stand if you are able. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." The gospel of the Lord. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Just be yourself. It's one of the most common pieces of advice that we like to give to each other. Just be yourself. You know, I think of high schoolers sitting around on the weekend, and they're getting ready to ask a girl out that they have something of a crush on, ask a girl to a dance, and they're nervous about it. And so the guys sit around and they say, "Just be yourself, man. Just be yourself and everything will be fine." We say that when someone's going into an interview and they're nervous. We say that, maybe you said that once upon a time to your significant other when it was time to go meet the soon-to-be in-laws, and they were nervous, they were afraid, and you said to your significant other, your husband or your wife or your future husband or wife, you said, "Just be yourself and they will love you." We love to throw around that advice. We say, "Just be yourself." And what do we mean when we say that? We're saying, just be the person I know you already are. Just act like the person that I see all of the time, and they're going to love you just the same way that I love you. That's what we say, but it's kind of, honestly, not that great of advice. Because I hear, "Just be myself, just be yourself," and now I get in my head. I go into a situation and I say, "Okay, what does it mean to be myself? I'm already stressed out because of the situation. Now I'm supposed to be myself. Who am I? I'm supposed to just be myself, and well, I want to be myself, but I know I have some things that are kind of quirks, kind of weird about me, and so I should be myself, but I shouldn't be too much of myself, because if I'm too much of myself, well then I might just scare these people away and they'll think I'm weird and won't want to see me again." Or we say, "Well, just be myself. I don't even really like myself all that often. I know my flaws. I know my imperfections. I know the things that I struggle with, that I get wrong all the time. So if I'm just myself, well, I don't think anyone's really going to like that." We throw it around, we just say it. But is it really all that helpful? You know, you could read what Jesus says here today, and you could almost say he's saying, "Just be yourself." But instead what Jesus says is, just be what you are. Be what I have made you to be. Be the thing I have created you for. Don't just be yourself. Be something so much better. Be the salt of the earth. Be the light of the world. Things you can be, because Jesus, he says, these are what you are. The salt of the earth, the light of the world. Last week we saw Jesus talk about what he told his followers life would be like. He said, you and I are blessed, right? He said that over and over again. He said, blessed are you when you mourn. Blessed are you when you're hungering and thirsting for righteousness. Blessed are you when you're persecuted. Blessed, 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 blessed. And then we look at all the things that Jesus is talking about and we say, really? That's a blessed life? And yet Jesus says, yes. That's a blessed life. Not because the outward circumstances are so great, but because, he says, these are the kinds of people who are connected to him. This is life, a reality in the kingdom of God. For those who are connected to Jesus, Jesus just says, you are blessed. Full stop. Point blank. That's what you are, because you're connected to him in the places that he's promised to connect himself to you. So Jesus goes through, he's telling his followers, telling his disciples over and over again, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed. And it's this uncharacteristic kind of looking thing when we think about what it means to be blessed. And then, what does he say? He says, these types of people are the salt and the light of the world. You see, Jesus doesn't just tell us that we're blessed so we can keep it to ourselves. It's not like Jesus says, you're blessed, now just go hole up somewhere, hide from the rest of the world, stay to yourself, never go out into the world, just live in that blessed state every single day and never go out into the world, into the places where that might have to be put on the line, where you might have to walk into some risky situations. Jesus says, you're blessed, and what Jesus wants is for us to be people who are blessed and now take that blessing out into the world around us. If Jesus just cared about telling us we're blessed, that he's called us to faith and trust and hope in what he's done, if that's all he wanted for us, he would have just taken me the day that I came to faith and brought me to heaven. But I'm still here. And so that means there must be something that Jesus still wants me to be in this world. And so that's what he tells us today. He says, you are blessed, you're already right with God because of what I've done. Now, you get to turn around and be a blessing to the people who are around you. And the two illustrations he uses to make that point are that of salt and light. He says, you are the salt of the earth. He says, you are the light of the world. So let's unpack a little bit what that means. What does it mean to be salt? What does it mean to be light in the world? There was once a Roman senator, politician, someone who said, mankind can live without gold, but not without salt. Kind of a striking thing to say, right? Because at my house, sitting on my dining room table, I don't have little flakes of gold sitting on my dining room table, but I do have salt. Salt is everywhere. We can find salt no problem. Well, we have to understand the situation in which that Roman senator said that salt is so important and the situation that Jesus is in, where he says, you are the salt of the earth. For hundreds of years, for most of human history, refrigeration wasn't a thing. And so, if you wanted to keep something from spoiling, especially something like meat from spoiling, you know what you had to do? You had to use salt. You'd put salt on the meat, you'd put salt on the food that you didn't want to spoil, and then that would keep it from rotting away. And so, salt was so important just for daily life. It wasn't just a seasoning, this was also a preservative. And so you'd put salt on stuff to keep it from rotting away. Salt was so important that Roman soldiers were actually known to take their wages in salt instead of in money. Because this was absolutely critical to living, especially in this part of the world. And so when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, he's not just saying some cute little statement. He's saying, look at the world around you. It's broken. It's sinful. It's not hard to see the ways that it's falling apart. And I've made you preservatives in this world. I've made you salt in this world. So, let your saltiness be known. Sprinkle salt in places. What would that look like? Jesus says you and I are salt. What would it look like for you and I to be what Jesus already says we are? He says you are the salt of the earth. What might that look like for you and I to be salt in the world? One of the things that comes to mind for me, it's almost undeniable that we live in a post-Christian, and a lot of people will use this word, postmodern world. What does that mean? It means that most people don't grow up with the church. And postmodern means that most people have been told, I need to create meaning for myself. I have to go out into the world. I have to figure out who I am. I have to figure out everything in life. I have to figure out all of it for myself. And then that leads to this idea of like, okay, that works for you over there. This works for me over here. As long as we're not hurting each other, we'll just keep doing our thing and plugging away. But that is so much weight to carry. To be told you have to figure out how to do life on your own. You have to figure out who you are on your own. That's an impossible weight. No one can carry that kind of weight. And so, what does it mean to be salt in the world? Maybe in a time, in a setting like this, I've seen this. Maybe you've seen this too. There's been something of a resurgence of young people who are, for whatever reason, interested in the church again. And maybe in more traditional forms of what the church looks like. There's probably a whole discussion that could be had there about what that means, what the ramifications of that kind of thing is. But these are young people who have been told their whole lives, figure it out for yourself. Find your own identity. Make your own meaning in the world. And they've tried it, and they're struggling. They don't know what to do. Maybe that means being salt right now means saying, there's meaning to life. You're important. You don't have to go and figure out your own meaning right now. You don't have to figure out how to do this all for yourself. You're important. You don't have to create your own identity. God has called his people. He sent his son, Jesus Christ, into the world to live, die, and rise for all of us. And that changes everything about life right now. Maybe that's how we be salt. By just sharing that with other people. By just living that with other people who are looking for something more. Who are looking for something meaningful. Something that actually they can taste on their lips. That they can see is different from the world around them. We have this awesome privilege of knowing who we are. And now we have the awesome privilege of just sprinkling that on people around us as we be the salt of the earth. There's other ways you can be the salt of the earth right now. You can be that in the way that you live your relationships. There's plenty of examples of bad relationships that people can find all over the place. Be the salt of the earth as you love your children, as you love your parents, as you love your spouse, as you love the people God has placed in your life. Be the salt of the earth as you live and love people just because you want to live with and love people. When you're doing that, you're being the salt of the earth as you show someone what it means to live as someone who's been called by Jesus. We're the salt of the earth, and so we be the salt of the earth. We can't help but be the salt of the earth. That's what Jesus says we are. And then Jesus, after he's told us that we're the salt of the earth, he also says that we're the light of the world. He said, you are the light of the world. The salt illustration maybe needs a little bit more explanation. I think we all understand the light illustration pretty well. But even still, I think there's something that's lost on us when it comes to Jesus calling us to be the light of the world. It is so hard for us to go into a place where there is absolutely no light. There's light everywhere. And so we go around and most of us are not familiar with a place that is in total darkness. Back then, total darkness was pretty much the norm, at least at night. And so that meant at night, just a tiny little bit of light could make a world of difference for people who were lost, who were trying to find their way. So Jesus, he's saying, the world is a dark place. It is going to be dark, and there's nothing that's just going to automatically turn the lights on. And so Jesus says, people in darkness need light. And when there's just even a tiny bit of light shining in darkness, Jesus says, and the point is, people can't help but notice it. They can't help but see it. That's what Jesus means when he says, a town built on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. It wouldn't make sense to light a light and then cover it up. That's what Jesus is saying there. He's made us light because the world is darkness, and the world needs lights. And now maybe you think you don't have very much light to give as far as light goes. Maybe you think you don't have enough light to make a difference in someone's life. But two things. One, you don't have to be a light for every single person. If there is just one person in your life who seems like they are struggling, who is going through a dark period, who is going through something that is difficult, just the smallest light in their life can make a world of difference. And then the bigger thing, the bigger point, Jesus doesn't ask us to manufacture our own light. Jesus is already the light, and now he asks us to reflect that light into the world. I've thought of it sometimes like the relationship between the sun and the moon. Does the moon create its own light? No. The moon does not create its own light. It simply reflects the light of the sun. And when does the moon do its best work? It does its best work when everything else around it is darkest. Jesus doesn't ask us to manufacture our own light. He says, just reflect my light back into the world. Be light. You are light, so be light. Let your light shine before others. And as we let that light shine to someone who's in the darkness, who's hurting, maybe that gives us opportunities to tell them about the real hope that we have for real people. Maybe they see you as a light, as someone that they can trust, and then they just go to you. And you weren't trying to do anything. They just come to you because they say, oh, you're just a light in this place. And you get to have a conversation with them, and maybe they look at you and they see a person who has this unwavering hope, and maybe sometimes really difficult hope in times of darkness in your own life, but you say, you know what? I can't manufacture this on my own. It's not just about me, it's about Jesus and what he's done for me. And so that leads to a conversation where they get to see a little bit more light. Maybe that leads them here, and they get to see a group of lights coming together and shining, reflecting the light of Christ back into the world. People who just want to let others know that we're salt, we're light in this world, not because we're better than everybody else, not because we've created this for ourselves, but because this is what Jesus calls us. This is what Jesus has made us, and now we can't help but be the things that Jesus has made us. Jesus says we're salt. He says we're light. And here's the thing about all of it, so that it doesn't just sound like I'm telling you, gotta be better, gotta be better, gotta be better. Here's what's weird about all of it. Jesus, right here, he doesn't give us a multi-step process on how to be saltier. He doesn't give us a checklist of things to do to be brighter in the world. He just says, this is what you are. You already are the light of the world. You already are the salt of the earth. And maybe that's surprising. Maybe that's shocking. Because I look at my life a whole lot of days and I don't feel very bright. I look at my life a whole lot of days and it's not salty, especially not in the ways that Jesus says to be salty. So how can Jesus just say, you're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world? Well, he can say it because he's declared us to be that. He can say that because he is the ultimate light of the world. When the world was in darkness, Jesus shone through the darkness with light. He is the salt of the earth. He saw this earth wasting away and he said, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to come into this world to save these people. Jesus can say this because he did everything right. He's done everything right for you. And now you're connected to him. Through word, through the sacraments, he says, I'm in you. And that means you are what I say you are. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Things I can call you because you're wrapped up in me. You're cloaked in me and my righteousness. I've done everything for you. So you can rest secure, rest confident in that, and then trust and know that when I say you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, you really are those things. And so we be what Jesus says we are. We are, so we be. We are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. And as we do that, as we be the salt, as we be the light, and maybe people notice it, maybe they don't, but all along the way, we remember the one who's made us salt, the one who's made us light, so that we could be those things and live in it. Amen.